Imagine it's 2026. We're not just reading the news anymore, we're trading it. We're looking back at the year the old media finally died, not with a quiet fade-out, but with a full-blown market crash. This is the story of how it happened.
And that's really the heart of it. This wasn't about a new app or a better algorithm. This was a financial trial by fire, where an entire industry was put on the stand and, well, it was found guilty.
So think of this explainer as a post-mortem. We're going to examine how prediction markets, and Polymarket in particular, didn't just compete with the media. They went straight for the jugular, exposing a fatal flaw in its entire business model, and that led to a total, catastrophic collapse of trust.
Which brings us to our first big idea here. This wasn't some gentle, gradual evolution. No, this was a hostile takeover. It was a power handover from the people who wrote the stories to the people who priced them.
Think about it. For generations, media outlets could shape public opinion, they could declare certainties, they could move markets just with their narratives. But what happened if they were wrong? Nothing. There was no real consequence, no financial penalty. And that imbalance, all that power with zero accountability, that was the fatal flaw that prediction markets were basically designed to exploit.
Okay, so let's really dig into that old system. What made it so incredibly fragile? Well, it was an economy built on what you could call zero-cost lies, a place where all the incentives were completely, totally broken.
In the old model, there was literally zero downside risk. An expert could go on TV and predict a market crash with 99% certainty. If they were wrong, who cares? They just moved on. In fact, sometimes the most outrageous, incorrect claims got the most clicks. That's cheap talk. And it created a classic lemon market, where you have so much bad, low-quality information flooding the system that the value of any real, genuine insight gets completely destroyed. And then AI came along, and by 2025, if information wasn't backed by a financial stake, it was just considered noise. Absolutely worthless noise.
And this table, I think, just lays out the conflict perfectly. It shows the two competing worlds. Legacy media, trust was all about brand history and fancy titles. Polymarket, trust was about having actual skin in the game. When the media got it wrong, you might get a tiny correction buried on page 27 days later. When the market got it wrong, traders lost money instantly. The media was driven by clicks, chasing your emotions. The market was driven by yield, chasing cold, hard probability.
But look, this wasn't just some academic debate. The market seized power because it publicly, repeatedly, and absolutely humiliated the media's official narrative during a few huge critical moments. Let's look at two of the most definitive examples.
This right here, this was the media's Waterloo. For 2 solid weeks after that first presidential debate in 2024, the entire media establishment was screaming, in unison, that the president would not withdraw. Columnists wrote thousands of words about his iron will. But over on Polymarket, the money was telling a completely different story. The probability of him withdrawing just stayed stubbornly high, between 60 and 80%. Why? Because the smart money wasn't reading op-eds, they were tracking things like Democratic donor funds, which had completely frozen up. When the official announcement finally came, the lesson was brutal. If you trusted the op-eds, you were in the dark. If you trusted the market odds, you profited.
And then you have the Gaza hospital incident. As the news broke, major outlets tripped over themselves to be first, citing unverified sources and sparking global outrage based on a totally flawed premise. But the prediction markets? They stayed cold and rational. Traders started organizing open-source intelligence efforts, analyzing crater videos, looking at audio spectra. And you know what? The market priced out that false airstrike narrative long before any major news outlet issued a correction. It was stark proof that sometimes greed can be a much more powerful driver of truth than journalistic ethics.
So, after getting publicly beaten on huge stories like these, the media industry really only had 2 choices left: become completely irrelevant or become a servant to the financial markets. This led to a complete rewiring of how information was produced and consumed.
The role of a journalist just fundamentally changed. You weren't the reporter who told everyone what happened yesterday anymore. You had to become an oracle, someone who could provide tradable alpha, that is, unique insight that could be used to make a profit in the prediction markets.
And the perfect example of this, the biggest one, was Dow Jones. Their partnership with Polymarket, it wasn't a collaboration. It was a total surrender. By embedding Polymarket's real-time odds directly into their articles, the Wall Street Journal was openly admitting that the market's collective intelligence was just flat-out superior to their own newsrooms. News was no longer a story. It was a data feed to be sold to trading firms.
And this simple phrase became the new law of the land. Show me your position. All of a sudden, writing an analysis of the Fed's next move without showing a screenshot of your Polymarket bet wasn't just an opinion, it was considered irresponsible. It was worthless cheap talk.
All right, so where does this road end? We're talking about the end game now. A new world where truth actually has a price tag, and that price comes with some pretty profound consequences and some very serious ethical dilemmas.
You started seeing the whole profession of journalist just fade away. It was replaced by this new breed of intelligence traders and super forecasters. The most respected reporters were now required to do something called reputation staking, literally posting a financial bond on their exclusive stories. If the story turned out to be false, they lost their money. Reputation was no longer this abstract concept, it was a liquid, clearable asset. And this, of course, opens up a huge can of worms, ethically speaking. I mean, if you're a journalist and you uncover a massive corporate scandal, do you publish it right away for the public good, or do you short the company's stock on Polymarket first and get rich? In this new world, you could argue that insider trading isn't a bug, it's a feature that incentivizes finding the truth faster than anyone else.
But the really scary part, the biggest systemic risk, was perfectly shown by the Zelensky's suit incident in 2025. A market was created on a totally trivial question, but the system relies on a network of so-called oracles to report the true outcome. A wealthy trader with a massive short position was able to bribe enough of these oracles to falsely report the outcome he wanted, guaranteeing his bet paid off. The lesson was terrifying. In this system, truth is just a consensus determined by capital. If you have enough money, you can literally buy your own reality. So if you're trying to navigate this new world, the takeaways are pretty clear. The more biased and emotional the old media becomes, the bigger the profit opportunity is on Polymarket. You have to learn to bet on cold, hard probability, not on compelling stories. Because in this new era, the only information you can truly trust is information someone was willing to put their money on.
And that leaves us with this one final, really unsettling question. We've built a system that's brutally efficient at pricing information and punishing lies. But in doing so, we've handed the power to define reality over to the highest bidder. So, when truth itself has a price tag, what should we, or what can we truly believe?